All right, so today we're talking about fractions, decimals, and percents, which usually results in a big groan from everybody in the room because it's one of those topics that, in general, people are a little bit nervous about working with these kinds of numbers. And I think it starts in elementary school. I think you first are introduced to these numbers in a way and from a teacher who maybe is a little bit nervous about using these types of numbers, and that just carries on and it never really goes away. Before we get into how to switch from one form to the other, which is really the bulk of the math that you're going to be doing today, there's a couple of things I want to make sure you understand about these three types of numbers. That we're going to see them a lot this year. You are going to see a lot of percents, you're going to see a lot of decimals, a lot of fractions, and I need these numbers to not be scary. And I need you to be able to look at these different representations as what they are, that they're just a number. So first things first, all three forms of a number, so a fraction, a decimal, and a percent, all three forms represent a comparison. And what you're comparing is a part to a whole. Now, I know they look very different, but all three of these numbers, whether you have a fraction, a decimal, or a percent, you are comparing a part to a whole. Now, what represents the part in each of these numbers, in each version of these numbers? So if I take, let's start with the decimal, 0.0003. I don't know. That can be our number, our decimal. So what in this number represents the part? If I'm comparing a part to a whole, where is the part? The part is pretty easy because it's what comes after the decimal. So everything to the right of the decimal is the part of this number. So that 0003 is the part. If I were to write maybe let's put a little note on there so you can add it to your notebooks. Let's say everything to the right of the decimal. I use shorthand a lot, get used to it. I'm a math teacher, not a language arts teacher. Now, what if it's a fraction? If I have the fraction 7/30, where is the representation of the part in this version of the number? Now, obviously, 0.0003 and 7/30 are not the same number. I'm not trying to say they are. They're very different numbers. But in this case, 7/30, where is the part being represented? And if you remember back to scary elementary days, the part is always the numerator. So the numerator, that is not how you spell numerator. I told you I'm not an English teacher, but I should at least know how to spell math words. The numerator is the part. It tells you how many parts you have. And I think we can leave it at that. What about a percent? Let's say I've got the number 72%. Where am I looking at the part in this version of a number? In this case, percentages, the part is always what's in front of the percent. So really, when you're looking at this, it almost looks like the entire thing is the part. But the part is the actual number that you're looking at, okay? So 72%, 72 represents the part. 7/30 represents the part, and the number 0.0003, maybe let's put something in front of this. I'll go ahead and put a 3.0003. The 0.0003, that represents the part. Now, so if those are the parts, then what is it that, I don't have a choice of good colors. I'm sorry, you are dealing with ugly colors today. This is what happens when calculus kids get a hold of the iPad. So, what represents the whole? All right, so in that same decimal, 3.0003, where am I looking at what represents the whole? And in a decimal, when you're writing a decimal, the number 1 in front of the decimal, really, I guess the entire number in front is representing how many holes you have. But the number 1 itself, so the actual number 1 represents 1 hole. All right, so number 1 represents 1 hole. So in this case, there's not a 1 in front of the decimal, there's a 3. So the number in front of the decimal represents how many holes you have. In this case, I don't have 1 hole, I've got 3 holes, and I got 0.0003 parts, okay? So whatever's in front of the decimal, that represents the hole, or the how many whole parts you have. How about the fraction, 7/30? In this case, the whole is the number on the bottom. So the denominator represents the number that refers to a whole. So I need 30 parts in order to make a whole. That's what that denominator of 30 means. Now the percentage is an interesting one because the part that represents the whole is actually the percent symbol. So percent stands for per 100. So that 100 is a whole when you're writing a number as a percent. So 72% means 72 parts out of 100 whole. Now, a little bit of math again, just kind of reviewing. I don't want to spend too much time on this part, but there's a few things I do need you to understand in the language that we use in the classroom. So if I have 7/10, and I'm going to rewrite that as a fraction for you, how much more do I need for a whole? So to make 7/10 into a whole, when you're looking at a fraction, remember the denominator, it represents the whole. So in order to make a whole, I need 10, but I only have 7. So to make a whole, I need to go from 7 to 10, which means I need 3 parts out of 10 more. So you would need 3/10 more, right? See, not so scary. What about a percentage? If I have 130%, how much more do I need for a whole? So if I have 130%, the 130 is the part. The whole, we said earlier, was the 100%. So I'm actually over a whole. If 100 is the whole and I'm at 130, then I'm actually 30% over a whole, right? I'm 30% more. I don't need more. I need to actually take some away to get to a whole. How does 2.5 compare to a whole? Well, if 1 is a whole in a decimal, I've got 2 of them. So you've got 2 wholes, and then you're left with 0.5 parts, right? So you're left with 2 wholes and 0.5 parts. Numbers aren't too scary. We're going to use these a lot in the class. I know in math class, a lot of times we just use nice numbers to make you feel good and feel like you're good at math and make you not scared of what we're talking about in the classroom. But once you get out and you're actually doing math in the real world, whether you're at the gas pump, whether you're at a store trying to get a discount, whether you're doing your taxes, or looking at your pay, it's not very often that things come to nice whole numbers. You get fractions a lot, you get decimals a lot, and you get percents a lot. So these are something that we just need to start helping get ourselves comfortable with. So the next part of what we need to know is how to convert from one to the other. How do I take a decimal, turn it into a percent, or a percent into a fraction, or a fraction into a decimal? So there's 6 different conversions that we need to know about, because I need to know how to make a decimal turn into 2 different things, how to make a percent turn into 2 different things, and make a fraction turn into 2 different things. So you've got this awesome like elementary school, 6th grade color wheel thing. that feels a little bit below you, right? It's a little bit of a elementary diagram, but it is going to do wonders as far as helping you remember how to save or save that knowledge on how to convert things. So decimals, let's start there at the top. I'm looking at my paper. We'll start with decimals turning into percent. So I've got this little thing up here telling me what my change is going to be, and it gives me 3 different decimals, and it tells me to turn it into a percent, and it gives me a hint. Right here it tells me to times by 100, and I will get a percent. So if I take 0.48 and I times that by 100 in my calculator, then I end up with 48, but I changed it to a percent, so I should probably put percent after the 48. 0.08, if I want to change that to a percent in my calculator, I do 0.08 multiply by 100, and I end up with 8%. Now 2.56 looks a little bit different because we got a number in front of the decimal, and that's okay. I still do the same thing, 2.56 times by 100, and I end up with the number 256. You put a percent sign after it, and you're good to go. A lot of you learned a trick a long time ago that you don't have to actually get a calculator and multiply by 100. Moving the decimal 2 places to the right is the same thing as timesing by 100. So if I take that 2.56 and I move the decimal to the right, I end up with 256. So the same number when I multiply by 100. So you can always move the decimal to the right twice. I told you I like shorthand. Words are awful. All right, now what about going the other way around? What about taking a percent and turning it into a decimal? Well, if going from a decimal to a percent is timesing by 100, then my diagram tells me to take the percent and divide it by 100 to get the decimal. So 97%, if I want to turn that into a decimal, in my calculator, I'm going to put 97 divided by 100. I'm not going to put 97% in my calculator. There is a percent button. We'll deal with that another day. For now, 97 divided by 100 gives you 0.97. 9% divided by 100, so 9 divided by 100 gives you 0.09. 125%, so 125 divided by 100, and you get 1.25 as your decimal. Now again, you can use the same shortcut that we used on the last method, but going the opposite way because we're going backwards. So instead of moving the decimal 2 to the right, you could also move the decimal to the left 2 points. So that 125 has a decimal right after it. So if I move it 2 to the left, 1, 2, I end up with 1.25, which is the same as dividing by 100. All right, let's move on. This is going way too long. We shouldn't be taking this long. All we're doing is converting simple numbers. Let me rotate this wheel for you. Oh no, it didn't rotate my numbers. That is awful, guys. Okay, you can pretend that those aren't there because when you rotate your paper, that doesn't happen to you. So what we're looking at now is fraction to decimal. So how do I turn a fraction? Is that really the way I want to go? Yeah, that's fine. We'll do fraction to a decimal. So it's here. We'll do it. So 7 divided by 8. I added a little note on here for you so you don't have to try to write this into this tiny little box. But to take a fraction, turn it into a decimal, it tells you to take the numerator, which is the top. Big kids, we call the top the numerator. And you divide it by the denominator, which is the bottom. Big boy language. So top divided by bottom. You do that in your calculator. 7, where did my pen go? 7 divided by 8. And your calculator is going to spit back 0.8, what, 75? Yeah, 0.875. 4 over 5, to turn that into a decimal, you're going to do 4, the numerator, divided by 5, the denominator, and you're going to get 0.80 if we're being picky here. You also have a button on your calculator. It's called the best friend button. If I were you, I would write best friend button right here on the right side, because your best friend button will do this for you with one click. Make sure you know how to use the best friend button. If you don't, come talk to me, talk to your neighbor. One of us will try to help you figure that out. It is a great button. We like it a lot. All right, let's do, I'm going to rotate, and we are just going to do whatever pops up on my screen. So we're not going to pick. We're going to let natural selection pick for us. Okay, so we just did fraction to decimal. So we'll just keep working our way backwards around. So let's go decimal to fraction. Let's do the opposite of that. If I want to go from a decimal to a fraction, you have a couple of options. The nice thing, the one that you're going to use, I mean, let's be honest, the calculator does this as well. If you want to write best friend button right here, you can write that because it's going to do this for you. And it takes way less work than what I'm going to show you to do, but I'm a math teacher, so I should probably show you what the calculator is doing behind the scenes. If you don't know what the best friend button looks like on the calculator, they don't all have it, but on the ones we use in class, there's this cool little button with two arrows pointed away from each other. And that turns numbers from decimals to fractions and back and forth. The way that you do it actually, as a human, is you write it the way that you read it. So 0.06, the way that you read that is 6, and then the 6 is 2 decimals to the right, which is my hundredths place. So I write that as 6 100ths. The next one, 0.48, I write that or read that as 48 hundredths. So I put 48 on top, 100 on the bottom. Technically, I should probably simplify both of these, right? This is 3/50. This one is going to simplify as well. It's going to divide by 2 a whole bunch of times, which is kind of nice. Right? You could rewrite it as 24/50, or you could write it as 12/25. You can just keep dividing by 2. I don't mind 48/100. In this class especially, fractions, I'm not super picky about you reducing them, but I am picky about you writing them correctly. So let's make sure we at least do that first step correctly. All right, so where are we at? 0.125. So the way I read that is 125 thousandths, because this place value right here is the thousandth. So I write it as 125/1000. Again, you're probably never going to do it this way. I've done this job long enough. If there's a button on my calculator I can click that's going to make it do it for me, I'm going to probably click that button. Now, percent to fraction. This one you have to actually do. There's not a button on the calculator that will do this for you. The nice thing, though, is, again, we're kind of just reading it. When I read 9%, what I'm actually saying is 9, come on, pen. I'm actually saying 9 per 100. Now, in math, when you see the word per, you learned at one point that that meant fraction bar. So 9 per 100 means 9/100. So there is 9% as a fraction. 97% is 97/100. 125% is 125/100. All you do is take the number, put it on the top, put 100 on the bottom. Maybe we can write that down here. Put the number on top, put 100 on bottom. When you start to spell on wrong, you know the video has gone on too long. All right, I think we've got one more. Let me erase this nonsense, and then one more. Like anybody still watching this video, you guys have all moved on and you're just doing the problems by yourself, but that's okay. Now I can say that I gave you the information. All right, fraction to percent. This is probably the hardest one to do because it's kind of, you have to convert it to decimal and then convert it to a percent. So you're doing 2 conversions. The math isn't hard. It's just 2 steps instead of 1. And again, I wrote this in your notes for you. It tells you to take the numerator. Where'd my little highlighter go? Take the numerator and then divide the denominator and then multiply by 100. Now you can do that all in one swoop on your calculator. I can type 3, because that's my numerator, divided by 4, because that's my denominator, and then times by 100, and I end up with 75. But 75 is now a percent, so I should put a percent sign after it. Please, please, if you are writing a percent, don't forget the percent sign. 75 and 75% are not the same things. All right, 2 over 5, numerator divided by denominator times by 100 gives you the percentage. Well, it doesn't. It actually gives you 40, but you have to add the percent after it. All right, I think you can survive. You've got a worksheet that looks like this. Now, the top half of the worksheet is actually a lot of what we just did. It's a little reminder of what a percent, fraction, and decimal are. And then it's examples of converting numbers in case you need more examples. If you paid really good attention to the video and you know what's going on and you just need me to stop talking, then don't even worry about it. If you didn't, if you still don't know what's going on and you're crying on the inside a little bit, here's a couple more examples to help you out of each type of conversion, all right? So example 1, example 2, example 3. Those are done for you. At the bottom is your homework. There's the practice. I need you to do those 38 questions, and they're not going to fit. Well, they might kind of fit on this paper. If they don't, you are welcome to do these problems on a different piece of paper. Take a picture of your work when you're done, submit it on Canvas, and congratulations, you are 1 assignment into a brand new school year.